Hey guys, tonight we are headed thousands of years back in time to drift along the Nile as the sun dips low and the desert begins to cool. You are going to meet a pharaoh who thought he could outshine bedtime itself. He tried to erase the old gods of night and dreams and replace them with a single god of the sun. Bold move for a man basically living in a giant sandbox. Spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this trip without sunscreen, bug repellent, and maybe 3 camelbacks of water strapped to your back. Asterisk. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love if you comment where in the world you're listening from right now, and what time it is by your bedside. Asterisk. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Asterisk. You're on the banks of the Nile. The great river stretched like a silver ribbon under the evening sky. The air smells faintly of wet rushes and cool earth. Palm trees creak a little in the breeze, as if they are whispering secrets to one another. Ripples lap gently against your small boat. The canoe is narrow, just sturdy enough to hold you, and a lantern swaying from the prow. Everything glows warm and golden for a moment, and then fades into rich blues and purples with the last sigh of the sun. Asterisk. It's quiet. Almost too quiet, though in the distance you catch the faint beat of a hand drum. Someone is probably celebrating the harvest, or maybe coaxing their goats home. For now, you float, listening to frogs as if a tiny choir has tuned up specifically for you. The rhythm of their croaks could serve as nature's own lullaby, if only the mosquitoes weren't auditioning for backup singers. Asterisk. Ahead, the outline of tall stone pylons rises, gates carved into shapes of papyrus and lotus stalks frozen in stone. This is the edge of an ancient settlement. To your right, you see grain stores, squat with domed tops, silos filled with wheat that will outlast the season's floods. Somewhere inside those mud brick homes, children are chasing one another with little clay toys, soon to be tucked in beneath linen sheets. Asterisk. But you're not just here to peek into ordinary Egyptian beds. No, you are here because the man on the throne, the Pharaoh Akhenaten, decided that bedtime, as people had known it, had grown too crowded with gods. Egyptians used to whisper prayers before laying their heads down, invoking Base, the dwarf-like protector of sleep, or Hathor, who enveloped night travelers with her embrace. They told stories of Ra's perilous journey through the underworld, trusting that, if he made it back at dawn, they, too, would awaken. Asterisk. But Akhenaten believed in only one deity worthy of worship, Aten, the disk of the sun itself. Imagine ruling a civilization where shade is your best friend, and then ordering everyone to rethink life as one giant open-air festival of solar rays. That's like building a city where no curtains are allowed, and bedtime must be attended with the blinds raised high. Sleep. Sure, but the pharaoh preferred your dream sun-drenched. Asterisk. You step ashore, sandals sinking into soft sand. It clings between your toes like warm sugar. The city hums with life, potters finishing their wheels, bakers coaxing fires for that last round of bread, scribes still bent over their reed pens. They are tired, shoulders hunched, eyes heavy, yet, no matter how the pharaoh insists daylight is divine, ordinary workers know bedtime waits when work ends. Asterisk. Your lantern light flickers against the temple walls, illuminating carved lines of gods with jackal heads and hawk eyes. They don't look erased yet, though you will soon learn decrees have ordered hammers to strike these gods from existence. For now, they still smile faintly at you, crooked and patient, as if they know human sunsets last longer than any royal mandate. Asterisk. A breeze picks up, carrying with it the smell of grilled fish drifting from a market stall. The aroma mixes with the sticky sweetness of date wine, creating a night air thick enough to taste. Nearby, you hear the low murmur of priests, some daring to continue their prayers to the gods of sleep and dreams beneath the cover of darkness. They keep their voices soft, as if the sand itself might eavesdrop. Asterisk historians still wonder what exactly compelled Akhenaten to reject so many deities. Was it radical devotion, political strategy, or maybe just the oldest case of wanting to be the only spotlight in town? Whatever the reason, he underestimated the Egyptian love of nighttime storytelling, whispered prayers, and sacred dreams. People need their bedtime comforts, after all. Asterisk, you climb a low hill just outside the city. The view spreads. Torchlight twinkles randomly, like the earth attempting to mimic the stars above. The stars themselves are sharper than you expected, tiny pinpricks, spilling endlessly across the fabric of night. They look closer than in modern skies, as if you could just reach up and casually pluck one down like a grape. But oddly, Aten's worship did not encourage stargazing. The night was suspected, unwelcome, a theater for gods that Akhenaten preferred to ignore. The heavens at night fell silent, though they still glimmer stubbornly for all who look. Asterisk, standing here, you feel both comfort and unease. The wider world is quiet, hushed beneath the rhythm of the Nile, yet pressing in from the palaces, you sense an order urging people to turn away from their usual sleepy prayers. It's as if someone told you to sleep without a pillow. Technically you could, but why make life harder? Asterisk, you sit down on the ridge, sand softer than any mattress, the universe wheeling overhead. Men with more responsibility than bedtime decrees have tried and failed to control the skies. You close your eyes, drifting on that thought, and let the soundtrack of frogs, distant drums, and the great river itself lull you toward the start of a very unusual rain. You wake, or maybe you never truly left that drifting, half-sleep still on the ridge above the Nile. The horizon glows with pale light, dawn breaking across the desert in rippling shades of peach. As you rub your eyes, the city comes alive beneath you, clanging tools, bleeding goats, sandals scraping across stone courtyards. The Egyptians are awake, and now it's time to meet the restless star of our story, the pharaoh with the most uncompromising bedtime bias in history. Asterisk, his name is Akhenaten. Well, that became his name after he changed it kings, and Egypt had a soft spot for rebranding. He started life as Amenhotep IV. Imagine working in marketing and suddenly telling your whole company, new logo, new mission statement, and by the way, our mascot is now only the sun. That's essentially what this man did, but instead of a logo, he had entire temples demolished or abandoned, and instead of boardrooms, he ruled an empire. Asterisk, you descend from the ridge toward the heart of his palace complex. Torches gutter in open braziers, morning air smelling of baked clay and sweet lotus incense. At the gates, guards stand with spears. Their armor gleams faintly, but they look a touch weary, as if standing in the pharaoh's non-stop sunshine has robbed them of proper naps. You can practically hear them thinking, "Great ruler, mighty Aten, we really just want a hammock." Asterisk, Akhenaten strides inside the hall. He is tall. Statues depict him with elongated features, a much-debated figure even in modern times. Slim arms, narrow eyes, curiously soft face, a ruler who didn't fit the chiseled superhero template his predecessors favored. Some historians argue his statues were symbolic, embodying the divine mix of male and female. Others speculate it was a real medical condition. Nobody knows for certain, which makes him, even as he walks in front of you, seem a bit unreal, halfway between human and dream. Asterisk, he calls for attention. Priests gather, scribes unroll papyrus scrolls. The atmosphere is heavy with ink, and tension, you could slice it with a reed pen. Akhenaten declares, from this day forward, only Aten, the radiant sun disk, is supreme. There will be no more prayers whispered in the dark to other gods. No more temples for the protective dwarf base. No lullabies invoking Isis's comfort during sleep. The cosmos, he insists, will now carry a single glow. Asterisk, and you, standing quietly among the crowd, realize just how ambitious this is. Egyptians loved a good god buffet. They had deities for fertility, for Nile floods, for protection at doorways, even for scaring off snakes hiding under your bedroll. It's as if someone suddenly told you that you could only keep one app on your phone and delete the rest. Good luck choosing between calendar, maps, and the little game you insist doesn't matter, but somehow always kills time before a meeting. Asterisk still, Akhenaten beams, his face raised toward a shaft of sunlight filtering down from an opening in the roof. He stretches his arms toward it, his elongated fingers like antennae for Aten's energy. The assembled courtiers clap hesitantly, some out of conviction, most out of survival instinct. The pharaoh is pleased, and who wouldn't be, having the entire nation as a captive bedtime audience. Asterisk beyond the hall, outside in the courtyards, the announcement spreads quickly. Bakers whisper about it between kneading loaves. Artisans roll their eyes as they paint another sun disk onto plaster walls. Farmers hear the decree, tangled in gossip along irrigation canals. You sense two layers of Egypt forming, the official one, bright and rigid, wrapped in Aten's ray pattern, and the unofficial one, more ordinary, where mothers still hum to bass under their breath as their children nod off at night. Asterisk. Historians still wonder, was Akhenaten truly devout? Or was he consolidating power by cutting out the entrenched priesthoods tied to Egypt's enormous pantheon? Was his worship of Aten a spiritual breakthrough? Or simply a pharaoh's attempt to silence competing voices, so only he and his god shared the spotlight? There's no final answer. But as you wander the palace hall, the air warm from morning sun, you realize the impact this man would have. A society jolted out of a centuries-old rhythm of prayers, myths, and bedtime guardians. Asterisk, yet some details remain endearingly human. Despite his theological thunder, the pharaoh also enjoyed music. Imagine him lounging while harps strummed and flutes. Trilled performance reviews in ancient Egypt included notations like, played enough to charm the king into forgetting matters of state. The musicians probably saved the kingdom more headaches than Aten himself did. In those songs, perhaps, a softer note survived. A hint that even kings who command the sun need melodies to heat their souls. Asterisk, he begins construction of a new capital, Aten. You glimpse its planned avenues on scrolls, wide boulevards, radiant temples with no roofs, so the sunlight would pour directly onto altars. No dim candlelit corners, no star-carved ceilings, just open air, day blazing into every ritual. It is, in other words, a terrible design for anyone who burns easily. Sunscreen would have been an essential luxury good. Asterisk, the royal family never did Akhenaten's side. Lanzeres. La Liga. And the art changes here. Figures more tender. Scenes of affection. Children playing. You read in them both a warmth and a strange sense that the pharaoh wanted to redefine every aspect of life, from belief to architecture to how couples held their children. Asterisk. And so here you are, drawn into Akhenaten's daylight dream. You feel the weight of his vision, heavy as a stone lintel. Even as part of you longs for the gentle embrace of night gods who watched over dreams. By pushing against centuries of tradition, Akhenaten has created a ripple you can almost hear, like a stone dropped into a still pool. You know the ripples will reach far even to the quiet comfort of bedtime. The morning has risen fully now, the Nile flashing gold. But beneath that brightness, you can feel how fragile this experiment is. A land so tied to routine cannot change its rituals overnight. The people still need whispered prayers for safe sleep, songs to guide the pharaohs in their dreams, charms against nightmares. Light may rule the morning, but the night is patient. You step back slowly from the pharaoh's hall, carrying with you the uneasy sense that Egypt has begun to walk between two worlds, one blazing with Aten's relentless sun, and one quietly waiting for stars to return. The sun climbs higher now, sharp and insistent. But you are not fooled. It's in the dark corners of Egypt, where the old gods still linger, even as Akhenaten proclaims a nation of sunlight. The temples and tombs stand stubborn, their carved granite echoing with centuries of prayers whispered just before bedtime. You wander into one such place, a temple half forgotten, its gates shadowy and cool enough to remind you that nighttime still owns half the sky. Inside, you let your hand brush carved walls. They are covered in delightful hieroglyphs, little owls, water ripples, profiles of dignified Egyptians, all staring sideways, as if perpetually unimpressed. The gods stare back too, jackal-headed Anubis, with his soft focused vigilance at the threshold of night. The ibis-headed Thoth, who once charted stars for sleepy scribes, and the household guardian bearded, fierce, in a cozy uncle sort of way. Base was notorious for looking slightly silly, but in the best way. His squat little form frightened away spirits that crept in as people drifted into dreams. Children adored him, and before sleep, mothers rubbed amulets shaped like his face to make sure nightmares stayed politely outside. But this quiet hall is less crowded today. Frescoes have been scraped away, some replaced with Aten discs, bright circles that seem unbothered by their dims. Priests sweep the floors, pretending to keep everything tidy, while murmuring with suspicious subtlety. You linger by one, just in time to overhear his hushed prayer to Hathor. She was a goddess of music, joy, and sometimes sleep, tender enough to cradle wandering souls. The priest whispers swiftly, as if bedtime prayers now require the cloak and dagger drama of a spy thriller. And you recognize something else. The very stubbornness of humans in their bedtime rituals. You could pass a decree today, banning all-night lights, yet you'd catch people sneaking fairy lamps into their corners. Back then, Egyptians hid charms beneath linen pillowcases, muttering protective spells against nightmares while outwardly praising Aten during the day. Historians still puzzle over how thoroughly people obeyed the pharaoh's edicts. Did every household truly abandon the old gods, or did they keep base figurines tucked discreetly behind jars of barley? Excavations suggest plenty of contraband gods survived under floorboards, which makes sense. Try telling anyone to stop whatever sleepy ritual helps them feel safe, and watch how creative they'll get about hiding it. You move deeper into the temple, where flickering oil lamps scent the air with a smoky tang. Dust motes float like golden signals that day and night are always blending in subtle ways. A group of acolytes rehearses lines of hymns, their voices oddly mechanical, as if convincing themselves their words will someday feel natural. They sing of Aten's rays stretching over Egypt, but between the lines, you sense yawns and the distant memory of star stories, the ones families used to tell while reclining under the sky. It strikes you that the old gods felt so tailored to human needs. Anubis walked with you into the shadowy unknown. Thoth measured your time in neat cosmic strokes. Base chased off the creepy crawlies that scuttled in your brain just as you were about to nod off. Aten, mighty in his glowing singularity, must have felt distant in comparison. He was radiant, sure, but he wasn't exactly the god who soothed you after a nightmare. The locals understood this. Beyond city walls, farmers gathering for meals continue trading stories. Their children still hum the names of moon and star deities, much the way modern children stubbornly refuse to go to sleep without at least one stuffed animal in attendance. Rituals stay rooted, even underground, because humans cling to comfort. Asterisk, you pause at a cracked doorway. Across the floor lies a scattering of worn amulets, dropped or tossed aside in haste. One shaped like a scarab, one like a tiny lion, and, unmistakably, Base with his potbelly and tongue stuck out, as if mocking anyone foolish enough to erase him. He feels oddly alive, a wink from the past right at you, as if to say, "Sure, Pharaoh. Light your sun all day long, people still need a nightlight." Asterisk. Historians still debate whether Akhenaten truly destroyed these artifacts relentlessly, or merely ordered surface compliance. The truth may rest in the cracks of walls and the quiet persistence of shadowed rooms. But you, standing among the dust and the stray frog croak echoing through this empty temple, feel certain the night gods refused eviction. They linger, stubborn as sleep itself. Asterisk, you exit slowly, eyes momentarily dazzled by the bright sunlight, and catch yourself longing for the dim reassurance of the temple shadows. No edict can erase that instinct. The pharaoh might try to turn Egypt into perpetual day, but night will always wait around the corner, never in a hurry, ready to collect its share of prayers. Asterisk. The river glimmers beside you, and you hear the same frogs as last night, still carrying their chorus. They don't seem to care which deity reigns, their rhythm steady as a heart. You smile, because in that moment, even as kings rearrange heaven's bedtime remains a faithful ritual, waiting to envelop dreamers in its quiet folds. You find yourself wandering toward the heart of Akhenaten, the city built from sand and ambition, where the sun would never be ignored. Akhenaten designed this place as a living hymn to his chosen deity, Aten, the sun disk that stretched its rays like fingers, handing life directly to him and his family. It's the kind of project only a pharaoh could dream up. Let's build an entire capital for sunlight, when everyone else just wanted a comfortable bed in the shade. Asterisk. The journey there is slow and drowsy, the landscape carrying you in wave-like rhythms. The desert stretches flat and pale, broken by the Nile glimmering like polished bronze. The horizon wavers in mirage, an almost watery shimmer that could trick you into believing pools exist just steps away. Eventually you notice something rising, where before there was only sand, neatly plotted streets, wide avenues, spacious courtyards. Akhenaten, half-finished and already eager to impress, welcomes you under the unwavering gaze of the sun. Asterisk. Walking through, you can tell this is no ordinary Egyptian city. For one, the temples here lack roofs, an intentional design floor feature, depending on your tolerance for sunburn. Without stone ceilings marked by stars or painted with constellations, the worshippers stand entirely open to Aten's rays. You have to admit, it is powerful. Sunlight falling directly onto altars, shadows erased into submission. But part of you misses the dreamy ceilings where gods of night once twinkled in bright pigments. Asterisk. The streets are unusually wide. They fan out across the desert like rays themselves, flowing into courtyards lined with plastered walls, freshly painted white and yellow. Workers shout to each other, carrying limestone, hauling bricks, smoothing mortar. At the same time, there's something weary about their voices and awareness that it doesn't matter how much Aten loves the sun, people still sweat buckets under its glare. You picture entire construction crews secretly wishing they could invent the first air conditioning unit. Asterisk. In the markets, vendors display small jugs of beer and baskets of figs. Aromas of roasting goose waft through the alleys. Everyone goes about daily life, but there's an undercurrent here. You notice that while the official murals show rays stretching toward the royal family, ordinary homes sneak in tiny graffitied figures of other gods. A scratched outline of Thoth here, a doodle of Bess's goofy face there. The night seeps back in like candle smoke, Akhenaten's palace looms ahead. Tall walls pierced with open courtyards where sunlight pours directly in, without curtains or shaded corners. Officials bow deeply as he passes. His name slips from their lips like a charm, and you, following quietly, notice how he carries himself thin, elongated, smiling faintly, as if he alone has cracked the mystery of the universe. To him, this entire city is proof that he and Aten lead Egypt together. Yet, as evening falls and you are glad it finally does, you realize something strange in this bright utopia. There are no shrines for night prayers, no cozy alcoves filled with oil lamps, no carved ceilings of stars, no statues of gods that soothe anxiety before sleep. It is a city made for daydreams, not nighttime ones, which would be fine if humans didn't inevitably need to sleep. You picture the ordinary families of Akhenaten attempting to nod off under thin linen sheets. Tossing uncomfortably beneath rays of moonlight, they whisper the same lullabies their grandparents sang, though now hushed, like conspirators rather than worshippers. A woman might hum to bass as her child drowses, quickly puffing out the name if officials pass. A father may tilt his eyes skyward, wondering whether Aten notices stars twinkling over his head. For all the grand daylight splendor, Akhenaten feels oddly underfurnished for nighttime living. Historians still debate whether the city was truly populated in full force, or if much of it stood symbolic, more monument than household. Excavations have uncovered half-finished homes, scattered workmen's villages, traces of hurried construction. Was it meant as a permanent capital, or more as a giant sermon carved into the desert? The debates continue, and yet you can sense one thing. It is an uneasily designed home, built without space for dreams. As the evening deepens, you notice something almost comedic. Despite building a city drenched in light, there's still no banishing shadows. The sunset creeps in like a stagehand, pulling curtains across the desert. The wide avenues, so carefully designed to reflect light, suddenly feel empty as torches flicker uncertainly in their brackets. Darkness arrives regardless, soft, inevitable. People hurry, carrying baskets home, their chatter quieter now. You imagine how frustrating this must have been for the pharaoh. To command temples without roofs, avenues as rays, families renamed for the sun, to stand still. The stars outperform him every single night with their dazzling silence. No decree can switch off Orion when he rises above the horizon. And so you find yourself leaning against a half-built wall, watching torches flicker while the vast velvet sky stretches open. You hear echoes of laughter, soft lullabies, quiet bargaining in the market. For all Akhenaten's bold plans, bedtime hasn't been erased at all. It has only gone underground, into whispers and shadows, where the old gods wait patiently for worshippers. As sleep beckons over this unusual city, you recognize that even the most radical of pharaohs could not banish something as human as the need for cozy ritual. Before closing one's eyes, the city might belong to the sun by day, but by night, it turns softly, inevitably, back toward the dreamers. The desert air has cooled now, and Aten hums, with its strangely mismatched rhythms, built to worship the noon sun, yet forced, like any city, to surrender tonight. As you drift along a quiet street paved in limestone slabs, you can almost smell dinners winding down. The aroma of lentil stew mingles with smoke from roasting goose, while hints of coriander and garlic cling to the air. The workers, dusty from construction, sit together under courtyards, sipping from clay mugs of beer that's more porridge than drink. You think to yourself, Egypt invented carbs before bedtime snacks became trendy. Life continues here, despite decrees. A woman weaves string while singing softly to her baby, in words not quite in Aten's approved playlist. A family crouches low, lighting a lamp with oil before muttering old prayers not too loudly, of course. The forbidden gods are like distant relatives at a wedding, officially uninvited, but somehow always showing up anyway. Asterisk. And that's what fascinates you. You see how even everyday routines begin to flex around the pharaoh's obsession with daylight. Priests from the old temples have been dismissed, their work declared obsolete. But here, in small ways, people are still cooking dinner in dark kitchens, tucking under linen sheets, whispering prayers before drifting off to sleep. It feels almost rebellious, though carried out with the gentleness of households just trying to live in peace. Asterisk. A group of children run past your feet, chasing each other with little clay toys shaped like animals. One trips, the toy clattering, and his mother scoops him up, whispering something into his ear as she brushes sand from his knees. You lean closer and catch the word Hathor. The goddess of tenderness hasn't been banished in this family's heart. You smile at how stubbornly soft rituals survive. Asterisk. Nearby, you hear the metallic clang of pots, followed by laughter so big, even the guard leaning on his spear can't help but smirk. You take notice. Egypt's working class doesn't exactly look like they're swept up in Aten's glittering revolution. For them, life is measured not in soaring sun rays, but in bread, beer, gossip, and tucking in before sunrise demands labor again. Asterisk. Historians still wonder, what did people really feel about Akhenaten's reforms? Did they believe in his solar devotion, or did they nod politely while continuing their old habits at home? Archaeologists uncover small statues, hidden in household shrines. Isis, tucked between cooking pots. Thoth carved into a wall fragment near a bed. These quiet discoveries whisper the truth. You can officially outlaw comfort, but you can't actually erase it. Asterisk. The workers didn't need Aten's cosmology nearly as much as they needed a good night's rest after hours under the scorching sun. And so, as you stroll between homes, linen curtains flutter in the breeze. Behind them, children lie, curled like commas, blankets tugged to their chins, while their parents murmur protective words. In those cozy corners, it isn't Pharaoh Akhenaten who rules its sleep. Asterisk. And oh, the little details you notice. Some people keep small satchels of herbs beneath their pillows to encourage restful dreams. Fennel, sometimes parsley, sometimes just a fragrant handful of reeds. Others paint tiny protective signs above doorways so the night would not invite unwanted spirits. Though Aten shines brilliantly in public, here, beyond the palace walls, it is star deities and dwarf-faced guardians like Base who still keep watch when eyes close. Asterisk. There's something oddly humorous about imagining Pharaoh Akhenaten insisting the sun is all you need, while his subjects quietly brew bedtime remedies and thank nocturnal gods under their breath. They must have nodded along with his speeches while thinking, yes, Aten is wonderful, but try telling that to a child afraid of the dark. Asterisk. One detail you catch is surprisingly touching. Music fills courtyards after meals. Flutes, simple harps, even clapping hands, keeping rhythm. Families dance a little, not elaborate royal ceremonies, but simple foot shuffles and laughter. Evening entertainment, right before drifting off. You close your eyes, feeling the joy ripple through you, as if even rebellion can be disguised as play. Perhaps this is the true defiance against Aten, not secret statues hidden under mats, but laughter before sleep. Asterisk. You turn down a narrow lane lit by glassy moonlight, and the sky reveals Orion's belt, twinkling sharper than any carved relief you saw earlier. Egypt once charted star maps with precision. To deny these glowing wayfinders in favor of a single sun must have felt like erasing half the universe. You wonder if ordinary Egyptians, lying outside before sleep, still traced constellations the way you might trace cracks on your ceiling patterns, comforting in their familiarity. Asterisk. The breeze shifts. Cooler now, brushing at your face like a soft cloth. The city hum is quelling, fires reduced to embers. Night, despite everything, reasserts itself. The pharaoh might claim it does not matter, but you know better. Dreams still belong to their old guardians. Whispered prayers linger past closed curtains, and bedtime continues, as it always has. The Nile glistens faintly beyond the houses, carrying secrets in its soft flow, and you can almost hear the land sigh with relief that night has returned. In the distance, a donkey brays, spoiling the tranquil moment. You chuckle. Egypt isn't only statues and godsits, also donkeys annoyed at something trivial right before people fall asleep. And so, as you prepare to wander deeper into you realize that while the day belongs to Pharaoh Akhenaten, the night remains stubborn, protective, tender, and thoroughly human. The night deepens around you, and for a moment, Akhenaten seems almost peaceful until you hear hushed voices drifting from the edges of a quiet courtyard. You slow your steps, following the glow of a few oil lamps shielded from the street. Here in the shadows, a handful of men and women gather softly together, their heads bowed and their voices carrying delicate notes of ancient hymns. They are priests, or rather, former priests of gods once essential to dusk and dreams. Akhenaten had dismissed them, disbanding groups tied to temples of Aten, Thoth, Hathor, and all others too tied to the night sky. Officially, their duties no longer exist. But faith isn't exactly a desk job you can quit with a neat resignation letter, and so you watch as they cling to ritual. They no longer chant in filled temples beneath star-painted ceilings, yet here in the shadows, they whisper to the gods that sleep cradles, hoping not to be overheard. The prayers are soft, more like lullabies than ceremonies. You can't help but think how beautiful they sound against the quiet backdrop of chirping crickets. A woman traces her finger absent-mindedly in the sand, drawing Bess's squat, bearded figure while murmuring words of protection. Another leans back to stare at the scattered stars above, lips moving around invocations to Nut, the sky goddess, who once bent over the world to enfold it each night. Their faith is alive still, like glowing coals hidden beneath a darkened hearth. But they are careful, always careful. If the pharaoh's guards passed by on patrol, there could be trouble. Aten worship did not permit such clandestine meetings. The priests masked their devotion as casual gatherings, songs disguised as chatter. From the distance, it might look like neighbors simply swapping stories before bed. Yet the tone of secrecy adds a certain tension that even you can feel, watching quietly from your corner. The oddity of it all makes you smile. Once, these same priests commanded great authority, presided over rituals with elaborate hieroglyphs, pyramids, and precious oils. Now they whisper to one another in low voices, sneaking chants into the gaps of conversation. It's almost humorous. You can picture someone telling a guard, "Oh, we're not muttering secret prayers to Thoth. We're just talking about grain prices." Historians still aren't sure how far Akhenaten's suppression of older gods extended in practice. Did priests live in fear of punishment? Or were these small, hidden cliques tolerated so long as Aten remained the official face of worship? The truth, as always, might rest somewhere in the shadows, neither fully reversed nor fully accepted. Still, the human need to cling to comfort is touching. You watch one man pull an amulet from his linen belt, a tiny scarab worn smooth, and press it briefly to his lips before slipping it back out of sight. Another sprinkles crushed herbs into a small clay bowl, their fragrance sweet and grounding, sending a gentle aroma through the courtyard. These gestures speak of a longing for protection, for something beyond the raw glare of the sun. Perhaps most poignant are the nighttime hymns you overhear. Instead of stern proclamations, they feel tender, almost intimate, as though each phrase is sung to coax listeners into safe dreams. You imagine children once clutched close in temples, soothed by these voices as they drifted towards star-filled visions. The contrast is striking. Akhenaten's official hymns to Aten are stiff, formal, bursting with light. But here, in the corners, the hymns to night gods remain warm, lulling, and human. Asterisk 1 priest. Let's slip a joke between verses. Does Aten tuck children into bed? He asks, smirking. Laughter bubbles lightly among the group. A little irreverence, barely allowed, but it releases the tension. Even in ancient Egypt, priests cracked bedtime jokes. That's oddly comforting. Asterisk, as you wander further among them, your feet shifting across gritty sand. One of the priests glances your way, but doesn't appear alarmed. Instead, he smiles faintly, as though he somehow knows you will carry this secret safely. You sit for a moment, half in half out of the circle, the chant threading around you like a soft blanket. Your eyes close briefly. The rhythm feels timeless, rocking you gently toward drowsiness, the way rituals always have. Asterisk, and in that moment, you realize Akhenaten might have tried to erase centuries of devotion, but sleep itself defies decree. People will always whisper their comfort prayers before shutting out the world. Shadows are not an enemy here, they are guardians of tradition. Asterisk, when you rise again and step back into the avenue, the air cooler on your face, the city feels different. Silent, yes, but full of hidden murmurs, if you listen closely enough. Beneath the surface of the old gods dream on, carried quietly in hearts, cradling bedtime just as they always have. Asterisk, the stars overhead gleam brighter now, shimmering like stubborn notes written across the sky. You can almost hear them sing, insisting on their survival as you make your way deeper into the night. The night has passed, and dawn slides its pale fingers across the rooftops of Aten. You, however, are not ready to let go of the cozy whispers from those secret priests, so you wander in search of something even more peculiar. How these Egyptians actually prepared themselves for bed. Once curtains were drawn and chores done, because pharaohs may obsess over theology. But ordinary people still need to wrestle with yawns, fidgety kids, and the age-old question, how do I fall asleep tonight? Asterisk, you enter a modest home tucked between two dusty alleys. Its mud brick walls are warm with the lingering smell of bread baked in the courtyard oven. Inside, you find simple mats on the floor covered with woven linen, jars stacked in corners, and a family settling into their nighttime rhythm. You crouch low, blending in, and watch their rituals unfold. Asterisk, first comes the cleansing. A small jug of water poured over dusty feet. The coolness of Nile water washing away the day's sweat. The youngest child giggles as she splashes too hard, spreading little puddles that her mother wipes away with a resigned sigh. Clean feet, apparently, meant clean dreams or, at least less sand grinding into sheets at night. Asterisk. Then comes the interesting part, the remedies. Ancient Egyptians were nothing if not imaginative in their attempts to invite sleep. You spot a clay jar being opened, filled with pungent onions. One bulb is set beneath a mat at the head of bed. It is believed that its strong smell wards off bad spirits, clearing the air for calm rest. Now, to anyone listening today, that might sound like voluntarily sleeping in a salad bar, but to them, nothing brought peace of mind like a humble onion's protective magic. Asterisk. Another family member uncorks a tiny vial filled with perfumed oil, perhaps myrrh or blue lotus. A dab to the forearm, a streak near the pillow, and the fragrance curls through the tiny chamber. It said lotus oil helped induce dreams so vivid they offered glimpses into other worlds. When inhaling the sweet aroma, you can almost imagine drifting toward a dream filled with star-strewn boats gliding across the heavens. Asterisk. The father of the household mutters a rhyme rhythmically, rubbing a charm between his fingers, a fragment shaped like a small frog. Amphibians were sacred to certain deities, symbols of fertility and renewal. To him, the charm draws protective attention, calming restless minds. You note how his thumb has worn the edges smooth from years of ritual rubbing. Asterisk. Historians have pieced these details from scrolls and tomb fragments, reconstructing lives less glamorous than pharaohs, but somehow far more relatable. And yet, they still debate certain remedies. Did Egyptians truly put herbs beneath pillows to encourage prophetic dreams? Or have excavated bits of plants been misread? Were onions truly protective? Or just practical bug repellents, masquerading as holy safeguards? The questions drift as unanswered as the dreams themselves. Asterisk, what's clear is that bedtime superstition was taken seriously. If an amulet was misplaced, it meant unease through the night. One particularly curious family member leans over and scrawls a protective spell onto the mud brick wall by the sleeping mat. It's quick, informal, much like doodling a note to remind yourself no nightmares here. That, too, feels centuries ahead of its time. Egypt as the original sticky note culture, but for the gods. Asterisk, and of course, there's music. Even in cramped homes, a simple reed flute or hand drum could accompany lullabies. Base, the goofy dwarf god protector, had entire songs composed in his honor. Some lyrics were playful, some almost nonsense, intended to make children laugh before sleep. You imagine a child holding a base doll close, giggling until her eyelids droop, while her parents sigh relief that finally, mercifully, bedtime has succeeded. Asterisk, it's at once tender and funny. Imagine Akhenaten declaring grandly, "There is but one, radiant disk," while a mother somewhere else in the city replies with an eye roll, "Yes, fine, but this onion works better at getting my kids to bed than your sun god does." Some debates kings couldn't win, no matter how high their temples climbed. Asterisk, you feel the comfort in these routines, even as your eyelids begin to grow heavier just thinking about them. There is something profoundly human in the reliance on strange objects and smells when the brain resists shutting down. You realize that across time, people have always wrestled with the same question. What does it take to close your eyes in peace? Asterisk, from oils to onions, base carvings to whispered rhymes, the Egyptians filled bedtime with layers of guardianship. They understood that dreams were not just illusions, but journeys. By protecting their sleep, they believed they protected their very souls. Asterisk, the house is quiet now. Parents lie beside children, with one dog curled across the doorway. The onion remains on duty, the oil scents curling upward in ghostly trails, the frog charm warm beneath its owner's hand. Soon, soft snores rise, blending with the timeless chorus of frogs along the Nile. Asterisk, and as you step back into the cool night breeze, you feel a strange comfort of your own. No matter how much pharaohs declare, sleep always belongs to the dreamers guarded, not by suns, but by onions, charms, and the secret belief that a small god with a comical nose still prowls outside to chase away monsters. The first faint light of morning brushes the horizon, and you are nudged along to the heart of the palace because, where there is Akhenaten, there is also Nefertiti, and trust me, she doesn't stroll politely into this story. She glides in with poise, so commanding that even the lizards in the sand seem to pause and take notes. Asterisk, you pass through the palace gates, where walls still smell faintly of plaster and paint. Workers lay fresh pigments of Aten's rays, stretching down toward the royal family. Most striking, Nefertiti is right beside Akhenaten in nearly every scene, her crown stretching tall and elegant, chin tilted like she personally invented posture, and unlike typical queenly cameos, she isn't lounging in the background with lotus blooms, no, she's front and center, sometimes even larger than her pharaoh husband. Asterisk, your sandals whisper against the courtyard stone as you follow the royal family's arrival. Harpers strike strings, their melodies trickling like water onto weary ears. The sun crests higher, filling everything with gold, but somehow Nefertiti shines brighter. She embodies Akhenaten's new vision daylight devotion, dressed in jewels, as if Aten itself handpicked her wardrobe. Asterisk, and here is where things get rather interesting. Nefertiti doesn't look timid. She balances the tightrope of political and spiritual life with such calm authority that it feels like Aten himself hired Her as the manager of Egypt's rebranding campaign. Official art shows her making offerings, squashing enemies, even sitting in equal stature with the pharaoh. Ancient Egypt wasn't exactly a culture that regularly placed queens shoulder to shoulder with kings, but Nefertiti pulled it off. Somewhere deep down, she must have understood that when your husband insists on reinventing the gods, someone reliable has to smooth out the sharp edges. The courtiers bow as she walks past, their heads dipped almost as low as when Akhenaten enters. You can practically feel respect, and maybe just a dash of nervous obi, 'cause there's no ignoring a queen whose chin seems permanently angled toward the future. Meanwhile, the children scamper nearby, 6 little royal daughters at various points in time, giggling, grasping their mother's hands, or clutching amulets. It's an oddly warm image for royal propaganda. For once, instead of stiff, hieroglyphic posing, you see humans laughing together, as Aten's rays extend like hands to bless them. You imagine neighbors peeking, whispering, "Look, the queen holding a toddler that's new." In a world where divine rulers usually kept everyone at arm's length, this casual tenderness felt radical. Still, behind the warmth, you sense the immense pressure she bore. Nefertiti had to stand beside this new cult, embodying Aten's grace, persuading everyday Egyptians that a life devoted solely to sunlight was natural. It must have been exhausting at times. Imagine smiling all the time in open courtyards when the sun is glaring like a relentless spotlight. You'd want to sneak back inside just to nap in the shade. Historians still debate her exact role. Was she an equal partner in Akhenaten's reforms, co-ruler in all but name? Or was she performing an elaborate role created by the king's vision? There are even tantalizing theories that she may have succeeded briefly in her own right after Akhenaten's death, ruling under another name. The secrets, like shadows in the desert, shift constantly when we try to pin them down. But tonight, or rather this morning, you get a simpler impression. She was the grounding presence in Akhenaten's glaring experiment. She soothed and balanced, polished rough decrees into realities, and gave substance to his sunlit dream. If Aten was blinding, Nefertiti was the steady hand, reaching out so people wouldn't stumble. A curious detail rests in your memory. Archaeologists have found Telatat's small stone blocks from Akhenaten, with scenes not only of ceremonial offerings, but also of Nefertiti simply riding in a chariot, kissing a child, or playing music. Imagine ancient propaganda, including a mom's casual moments. Perhaps her humanity was itself part of the message. If Aten could bless even the intimate bonds of family, maybe people would trust him more easily. You can picture her stepping back into private chambers, removing the tall, iconic crown, and sighing deeply the way anyone does after a long day of smiling for the public. Maybe, in those quiet moments, she dabbed perfume, plucked at a harp, listened to the children giggling just before sleep. Did she whisper old prayers of her own? Or did she trust Aten alone to guard her dreams? That, of course, is something no wall relieves one of history's riddles. You slip out of the palace again, the memory of her presence glowing like a lamp in your thoughts. It strikes you that people like Akhenaten may bend history into peculiar shapes, but figures like Nefertiti keep it from breaking entirely. She moved like a lullaby in a desert of blazing rules, smoothing, sustaining, and leaving her own quiet imprint, as the sun climbs higher, sparkling across the walls and courtyards. You know that the queen, as much as the pharaoh, has set the rhythm of these days and nights, and just beyond the palace gates, bedtime still arrives faithfully, escorted not only by royal decrees, but by whispered songs Nefertiti herself may have hummed to her daughters. By the time you step back into the streets beyond the palace, the glamour of Aten's sunlit perfection is replaced by something far more familiar, the clang and shuffle of everyday work. It turns out that even under divine rays, Egypt ran on bakers, brewers, builders, and neighbors who happily swapped gossip louder than prayers. Asterisk, you wander down a lane lined with whitewashed walls and the fragrant, earthy smell of bread curling into the air. Bakers squat by ovens, their torsos glistening with sweat, shaping flat loaves with expert rhythm. The bread is round, chewy, and dense, the kind Egyptians ate by the armful. One man taps a burned loaf with exaggerated disgust, shrugging before handing it off to a child who doesn't care it's still warm. The laughter that follows fills the air more loudly than Aten's hymns ever could. Asterisk farther on. You pass women weaving baskets from papyrus reeds. Their hands work deftly, fingers flashing like small birds, as they chat openly about which neighbor's goat has escaped again. Apparently it's always the same goat. You chuckle to yourself. Some things about humanity never change. Troublemakers are eternal, whether they're children, cats, or the occasional stubborn goat. At a corner, a group of builders set down their tools and sprawl in the shade of a half-built wall. One rubs his shoulder, groaning about aches from hoisting stone. Another slouches over, declaring dramatically that he won't live through another season of heat. The others nod in solemn agreement before bursting into laughter and pouring him more beer. It's strong, thick, slightly soured, the ancient Egyptian version of an energy drink that also acted like liquid bread. Asterisk. You notice how little of their conversation centers on Akhenaten's reforms. To them, Aten is important only as far as it keeps the palace satisfied. Bread, beer, aches, and gossip are more urgent. They tell stories, to the same style of ordinary street tales that have cushioned people into nightly dreams for centuries. One skinny, sunburned worker describes losing his sandals last week and accidentally walking home barefoot through goat droppings. The crowd roars until tears blend with dust on their cheeks. Royal decrees might change history, but humor is what actually keeps dinner lively. Asterisk. And then there's music. You hear it before you turn the corner. The faint tapping of a sistrum, a metal rattle shaped like a horseshoe, and the hollow thud of drums. A few workers after their shift beat out rhythms, while others sway, clapping along with half-steps. Ordinary families gather, their voices joining in playful chants, some intended to make children giggle. Laughter and rhythm stitch themselves into the quilt of night over Akhenaten. Asterisk. Historians have discovered traces of such gatherings in workers' villages, but they still debate how openly people celebrated traditional rituals and small deities. Did they mask references to forbidden gods as jokes, metaphors, or random song lyrics? Likely yes. Archaeologists study fragments of scratched graffiti left on walls showing base, Hathor, or patterns of stars. It's evidence that even while grinding grain 4 hours, people snuck nighttime favorites into their daily noise. Asterisk. And here's the curious thing. These kinds of routines don't feel rebellious in grand, revolutionary fashion. They feel cozy, necessary, like savoring dessert when you're told you shouldn't. There's nothing fiery or confrontational, just the stubborn persistence of bedtime comfort settling into conversations and rituals. Asterisk. You pause by a brewer's small workshop, the air filled with bubbling yeast. Thick brown beer splashes from jar to jar, while one man swears loudly and dramatically that Aten himself would drink his batch before anyone else's. His companions tease him mercilessly, suggesting even the pharaoh wouldn't endure the hangover. You smile, imagining gods themselves chuckling at such mundane squabbles. Asterisk. The street grows dimmer as torches flicker to life. The conversations soften, beginning their sleepy descent toward the night ahead. Families collect baskets, stack finished loaves, usher children home. Even goats trot lazily toward yards, bleating their evening protests. Asterisk. You realize how joyfully ordinary this city feels once you leave behind the courtyards of power. These are not Aten's rays commanding devotion, they are people living out rhythms of work and rest, so deeply embedded in muscle memory that no decree could erase them. Every laugh on these streets quietly resists sameness. Every shared song carries older gods back into the night. Asterisk as your feet shuffle along the dusty avenue, you sense the rhythm of humanity itself, stretching, aching, gossiping, eating, and finally inevitably curling toward sleep. Pharaohs may rule the morning, but it's baker's arms, brewer's jars, and weaver's nimble fingers that truly knit each bedtime together. Asterisk, you retreat farther back. The stars reopening overhead, bright and mischievous. They look like they're listening to the gossip too, as if Orion himself is smirking, leaning on one elbow to hear the latest about the neighbor's goat. Under those glittering lights, Akhenaten no longer looks like a city of sun. It looks like any human settlement. Noisy, funny, tired, and ready for bed. Night settles firmly now, stretching over Akhenaten like a vast velvet curtain. The torches in courtyards flicker against fresh plaster walls, and shadows grow long, spilling into narrow lanes. You leave behind the noisy workers' neighborhoods and find yourself wandering toward the edges of the desert, where the great monuments and tombs are being built, or rather, left unbuilt. Half-finished structures rise before you. Stacks of limestone blocks appearing like frozen waves of stone. The silence here is startling after the chatter and music of the city. No laughter, no children running with clay toys. Just the scrape of sand against your sandals, and the occasional call of a night bird wheeling lazily overhead. The unfinished tombs stretch into darkness. Lonely guardians meant for eternity, but abandoned mid-thought. Egyptians had always been meticulous about the afterlife. Tombs were essential houses for eternity, where walls glittered with paintings of gods, stars, and family feasts. You would expect to see vibrant murals, promising endless banquets, and protective deities too. Shepherd souls safely into sleep everlasting. Yet here in Akhenaten, something's missing. The tombs are stark, bare walls scoured by hammers, decorations left unfinished. Lines of hieroglyphs trail off halfway through prayers. Like an exhausted scribe fell asleep before finishing his sentence and never woke again. You step into one such tomb. The interior is cool, smelling faintly of stone dust. Torchlight glances off anxious hieroglyphic figures carved in hurried strokes. Aten's radiating sun disk appears overhead, yet it feels oddly out of place underground. Sunlight cannot reach this far into rock. Worshippers are etched in awkward rows, their arms stretched up far too neatly, stiff like mannequins posing at a forced rehearsal. There's no Hathor here, no comforting knot arching overhead, no jackal, Anubis, guiding souls through night's mysteries, and that absence hums loudly in your chest. How do you build a tomb with no guardians of night? It's like writing a bedtime story without an ending. Surely Egyptians laying their heads down after long days wondered, who will lead us through the realm of dreams if the pharaoh insists the only god is sunshine? Some archaeologists argue this abruptness proves that artisans weren't invested in Aten's vision. They worked mechanically, carving rays across ceiling panels without heart, leaving projects unfinished the moment resources waned. Others speculate the death rituals felt hollow without their old, vibrant cast of actors. Even here, historians still wonder why so many royal tombs for this city never reached completion. Did workers quietly resist? Or was the pharaoh's reign simply too short to finish them all? You run your hand across the wall, the grooves rough and shallow. They feel impatient, as though the stone itself longed for brighter, more colorful depictions of stars and protective deities that never arrived. You can almost hear the complaints of artisans muttered under their breath. All this work, and not even an owl or jackal to carve. Aten's rays again. At least throw us a crocodile. As you press further inside, the torchlight rides across empty corners. The unfinished silence swells, eerie but not frightening more, like an unsolved lullaby left hanging in the air. The absence of imagery carries more weight than decoration ever could. Without the gods of night taking their usual places in these tombs, there's a strange vacancy. You feel again the deep human need for nighttime comfort. Even the dead, it seems, require something more tender than daylight to keep them safe. The irony sharpens in your mind. Tombs are meant to anticipate eternity, yet here they stand, skeletal, barely ready for bedtime stories, as if death itself hesitated in the glare of Aten's reforms. Incomplete, uncertain, stretching their shadows across the desert as reminders that some forces simply resist being curbed. You step back outside, into the open air. The stars above are dazzling now, woven like silver threads across the black expanse. They gleam ironically over these unfinished monuments, stubbornly reclaiming the sky for themselves. One bright meteor even streaks across, a playful answer to the pharaoh's exclusion of star gods. The heavens still put on their nightly show, decree or no decree. Behind you, the tombs sit unfinished, walls echoing with the silence of gods who were uninvited but refused to leave memory. Ahead, Akhenaten glows faintly in the distance, torches twinkling in little pockets. It feels like you're caught between two sleeping worlds, one of restless mortals still clinging to onion charms and lullabies, and one of restless monuments forever waiting for guardians who never arrived. A cool breeze sighs over the desert, and you find yourself musing. Perhaps it is not only the living who need bedtime comfort, but also the dead, without best to laugh at nightmares, without nuts stretched protectively across the heavens. How restful could eternal sleep really be? And so you linger there, staring at these empty tomb facades, half-hushed lullabies of stone, carved but unfinished. They whisper the same truth. Sunlight may command day, but the night, vast and patient, will not be so easily replaced. You leave behind those skeletal tombs, their half-finished walls still echoing with silence, and wander back toward the living heart of the city. Evening descends again, soft as linen sheets, and this time your steps carry you toward the royal quarters, where children are laughing. Their giggles skip through the night air like little bells, high-pitched and relentless, a reminder that even in the pharaoh's golden experiment, bedtime is still a process and, let's face it, kids are not famous for obeying orders, divine or parental. Asterisk, you slip quietly into the periphery of an open courtyard. Torches glow, the stone walls painted with Aten's rays cascading down onto Akhenaten and Nefertiti's 6 daughters. The artwork insists they are perfect embodiments of divine family living. But if you listen closely tonight, you can hear the bustle and mischief of their less official reality. Small sandals slap across tiles, linen hymns swish as children twirl and chase. A dropped toy clatters across the ground. It sounds, in short, like any other family trying to wrangle a half-dozen little ones into bed. Asterisk, the girls are radiant, of course, dressed in white linen gowns. A nursemaid scoops one child into her arms, while another wriggles free. A third has decided tonight is the night she will demonstrate her mastery of not going to sleep. You smile. There is something charmingly universal about these battles. Even royal children dilly-dallying when bedtime calls. Asterisk, and here's where a curious detail emerges. Their names. Akhenaten gave his daughters names, studded with references to Aten, Princess Meritanten, beloved of Aten. Meketaten, protected by Aten, Ankusen Paten. She lives through Aten, and so on, all aligning neatly with the pharaoh's theological agenda. Imagine being a kid with a name entirely designed for a political statement. Even Egyptians must have rolled their eyes. Thanks, Dad. Now everyone knows you're using me as a billboard. Asterisk, yet, here's the twist. Within hushed walls and bedtime rituals, those grand Aten-centric names often softened into pet names drawn from older traditions. Mothers or nursemaids, whispered nicknames invoking deities far removed from the sun disk. Small lullabies slipped Hathor's warmth, Isis's wisdom, or Bess's protective silliness back into the nursery, even among the pharaoh's own household. After all, Try lulling a child to sleep while praising the blazing noontime sun. It's less bedtime story, more motivational speech at exactly the wrong hour. Asterisk. Historians still debate whether Akhenaten's children privately honored other deities. A few inscriptions hint at compromises. Names carved at one time, with Aten references, altered later to invoke older gods when political tides shifted. Even within the boundaries of his palace, whispers moved under the threshold. Like bedtime secrets tucked beneath covers, asterisk nearby, musicians pluck gentle notes on harps. The soft strumming blends with the squeals of girls attempting to stall bedtime. Nefertiti leans down to hush one errant daughter, her voice carrying even without effort. You sense in her a mother's finesse, part patience, part firmness, part weary amusement. She does it elegantly, as if the divine order of Egypt depends on ending the bedtime battle before midnight. Akhenaten, meanwhile, sits nearby, gazing upward into the lamplight, as if waiting for someone to cue the Aten rays to appear indoors. You halfway expect him to say, "Sweet girls, be still, the sun, God is watching," which is not exactly the snuggliest lullaby line. Asterisk. And still, through all of this, subtle, secret layers breathe. In the background, a nurse hums something older, almost too quiet to catch. A soft hymn, maybe one passed along from her own village invoking protective deities, long dismissed. It blends seamlessly with the harp notes, almost daring anyone to call it heresy. The children ease into quieter tones, comforted not by abstract devotion to daylight, but by words knit with ancient familiarity. Asterisk. You catch yourself smiling at the contradictions happening in real time. Here is Akhenaten, perhaps genuinely convinced his reforms will last forever, naming his daughters after Aten to enshrine them under the sun's eternal glow. Yet here also are those daughters, falling asleep to lullabies whispered from forbidden pantheons, toes curled beneath blankets, safe under charms brought secretly into the nursery. Asterisk. The palace walls are painted in stiff ceremonial rays, but within those walls, love meanders freely, reluctant to submit fully to ideology. Humans, it turns out, cannot legislate the most intimate corners of their lives, not at the dinner table, not around gossip fires, and certainly not in nurseries, where coaxing children to close their eyes takes precedence over cosmic theories. Asterisk. And you realize this is one of history's charming little contradictions. You can name your child protected by Aten all you like, but when she cries in the night, it will be Base or Hathor, simply the steady arms of her mother that truly protect her sleep. Asterisk. As the courtyard quiets, you step back into the cooler night air. The palace towers glow faintly in torchlight. Above them, the stars continue their nightly performance, twinkling mischievously in defiance. They seem to wink at you, as if amused at the gaps between royal ideals and reality tucked beneath linen blankets. Asterisk. Once again, the softness of bedtime proves itself stronger than sunlight decrees. The laughter fades, the harps pluck fewer notes, and the royal household, like every other in Egypt, slips inevitably into the embrace of dreams. The palace has quieted, but your feet carry you past its high walls and back into the stillness of the desert air. The stars hang like polished jewels, impossibly sharp against the endless velvet sky. You pause, tilting your head back, and wonder at the irony. Here is Egypt, a civilization that had once adored the stars, charted their patterns with scientific devotion, mapped their rise and fall to track time itself, and under Akhenaten, that entire nightly performance is officially ignored. Asterisk. Your sandals crunch over gravel as you shift closer to the river's edge. Reflections of starlight ripple on the Nile's surface, thousands of tiny lights shivering atop the black current. You remember that before Akhenaten's reforms, Egyptians thought of the night not as a void but as a passage, something alive, linking human dreams to cosmic order. The goddess Nut stretched her body as the arc of the sky, swallowing the sun disk at evening and giving birth to it again each dawn. Each star was said to be a soul sailing across her great body. Dreams, in that worldview, weren't frivolous, they were part of the eternal cycle, a glimpse into the heavens' quiet conversation. But here in Akhenaten, there are no prayers to Nut painted on walls, no offerings to Sa, the constellation Orion, no loving hymns to Sopdet, the star Sirius, whose rising signaled the Nile's annual flood. The stars remain luminous overhead, yet politically irrelevant. Blank spots on the story, the pharaoh insists, is now only about noon. And yet humans keep looking up, don't they? You imagine the weary builders of the day, lying on simple mats at night, staring at constellations familiar since childhood, naming them softly, even if they dare not speak those names in daylight. Parents pointing things out to their children, Orion's sash, the bellowing bull, the dark streaks that mark the Milky Way like spilled milk dashed across the heavens. It's irresistible as spotting shapes in clouds today. Historians still wonder, did people obey the king fully, turning their gaze away from the heavens entirely? Or did they secretly continue their observations? We know Egyptians were meticulous sky watchers, their calendars dependent on Sirius's rising. Could that really be erased in a generation? Perhaps not. Perhaps even in Akhenaten, farmers snuck time with the stars, breaking the pharaoh's solar monopoly with every glance upward. You look again at the sky and draw comfort from its permanence. The artisans may carve off paint from temple walls, but none can scrub the stars themselves. They blink stubbornly back, vast reminders that the universe doesn't take sides in royal arguments. Aten may blaze in the day, but it cannot carry the night alone. There's something deliciously humorous in imagining an official decree. Attention, all citizens. Kindly refrain from stargazing. Staring upwards after dark will no longer be tolerated. You can almost hear a small child replying, "Sorry, Pharaoh, but the stars are right there." Try as he might, Akhenaten couldn't rebrand the simple act of looking at the sky. And what comfort those stars must have given to a man finishing an arduous shift, spreading his cloak against the sand. The sky was not a danger to beware, but a familiar map, a reminder that he was a small piece of something grand, dreams born beneath them, wove into those patterns. The old gods of night may have been painted over on temple walls, but their realms overhead never left. The Nile breeze picks up, carrying a scent faintly metallic, faintly sweet, whispering against your cheeks. As reeds sway, you imagine Egyptian families sitting along the bank, sipping cool water or diluted beer as they traced constellations until children yawned. No matter the king's vision, no matter the official hymns to Aten, these nightly vigils remained like invisible prayers. You step closer to the water's edge and crouch, dipping your fingers into the current. The ripples distort the reflected stars, making them waver like dream fragments. It reminds you of that universal edge between waking and sleep, where thoughts stretch and twist into something ungraspable but oddly meaningful. That was the Egyptians' world too, one that tied their personal dreams to Nut's grand, star-filled canvas. The stars above almost feel mischievous tonight. One winks extra brightly, as though laughing at the pharaoh's attempt to erase them from the world's imagination. Down on earth, rules and decrees are binding. Up there, nothing listens. Stars don't take edits. They just continue shining as they always have, keeping company with those who glance skyward before drifting off. And so, as you lean back on your elbows to better drink in the Milky Way, you feel a comforting pattern wash over you. Slow and cyclical, the Nile flows, the frogs chorus, and the stars scatter their silver notes across the scale of the night. And somewhere, long after temples were roofless and kings demanded obedience, all of Egypt still fell asleep under this stubborn sky. The river hums its eternal song, and you rise slowly, brushing dust from your linen. The stars remain dazzling overhead, but you sense something in the air shifting. It isn't just the breeze whispering across the temple walls. It's the return of old companions. Their names run quietly in the minds of people once too cautious to speak them. Hathor, goddess of tenderness and music. Thoth, guardian of wisdom and scribe of dreams. Base, the mischievous dwarf with a comic scowl, still laughing as a protector in the background. The bedtime deities, long dismissed, are tiptoeing back, like parents sneaking into a child's room with a nightlight. Asterisk, as you walk through Akhenaten's lamplit avenues, the city sounds different tonight. Behind shuttered doors, prayers are louder than before, still whispered, but with less fear. You catch fragments, the hushed plea of a mother muttering Isis's name over her dozing child, or the chuckle of workers trading off-key songs invoking bass as a clownish guardian for their families. Little echoes, but powerful ones. The old gods are stretching their limbs after a long, forced nap. Asterisk, one alley reveals an almost funny sight. A man struggles with his goatches, perhaps even the same notorious goat of Gossipand. Dangling around its neck, tied with string, is a tiny amulet of Anubis. The animal brays defiantly, but the man seems oddly reassured, muttering that Anubis will keep both him and his troublemaking companions safe at night. Who says gods only guard humans? In Egypt, even goats got divine coverage plans. Asterisk, and oh, how natural the gods feel in these moments. Where Aten is official but distant, these old deities are woven into ordinary life. Dreams are their playground, visions of journeys across Nile boats, glimpses of the dead visiting the living, messages wrapped in riddles. For Egyptians, sleep was never just empty. Silence, it was a liminal gateway. And who better to call upon than Hathor to offer warmth, or Thoth to ensure wisdom, or Base to chase away the giggling goblins of nightmares. Asterisk, historians have puzzled over archaeological finds from this era. Suddenly, in certain houses, Aten's strict imagery disappears, replaced again with amulets of Thoth or figurines of Isis. Was it rebellion? Or simply relief that the old gods whispered back when called? Perhaps people had never abandoned them, only pressed pause. It's also possible the political structure simply couldn't hold without broad devotion. Aten's cult felt top-heavy, like a roofless temple unable to weather the first sandstorm. Asterisk, passing by a workers' village on the city's outskirts. You hear rhythms from within. Drums beat. But tonight, something is different. Instead of Aten's stiff devotion songs, these carry layered choruses. Women sing lines invoking Hathor's bosom as a place of rest. Children clap along. It feels playful, alive, warm. One man tosses a reed hat aside and begins dancing like a jackal, to laughter louder than the music itself. For all Aten's stern declarations, these reclaimed rituals sparkle with joy. Asterisk, artisans, too, find subtle rebellion. A potter paints a jar by firelight. At first glance it shows Aten's rays in neat lines, reaching down with their tiny hands. But hidden at the base, scratched faintly, is a star. Small, almost insignificant, but there it is, glimmering quietly in defiance. Someone, even at risk, wanted to say, "The night is still ours." Asterisk, and perhaps most poignantly, you notice the priests, once hidden, stepping a little more boldly. One leans near a shrine and restores Bess's grinning face on a scratched wall, a careful etching, tongue poking out as if mocking sunlight itself. You swear the little god winks at you in torchlight, his expression mischievous and endearing. Asterisk. Historians still wonder if this return marked a conscious rejection of Akhenaten, or if, like flowing water, tradition simply resumed the moment obstacles cleared. What matters here isn't the politics, it's the pure relief you feel in watching people restore the bedtime quilt of gods they had always trusted. Routines are returning to their rhythm. People once again tuck onions beneath pillows with conviction, burn oils joyfully. Chant nighttime spells with ease. Asterisk, and as you drift further out, the layers of prayer seem to blend with the natural soundscape. Frogs croak, reeds rustle, stars glisten, all combined with the resurrected voices of the old companions. In this mingling chorus, Egypt feels like itself again. Asterisk, you stand very still, breathing it in, half smiling at the inevitability. Kings can outlaw deities, rename cities, sculpt walls, but they cannot quite erase the need for guardians of dreams. Sleep, in its stubborn universality, demanded its gods back, and the people, with a brave confidence that feels almost childlike, are welcoming them home. Asterisk, the city winds itself into slumber, softer tonight than the sterile hush of Aten. You realize, with comfort, that no matter how blazing the day, the night always returns, bearing its gentle guardians like lullabies in the dark. The return of the old gods hums like background music as you drift along the edges of Akhenaten. But in the palace at the city's core, silence thickens. The Pharaoh, this man who raised a city from dust and tilted the heavens toward a single sun, disk has grown frail. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. The sun is setting on Akhenaten's radical reign. Asterisk, you imagine him lying on a padded couch, the linen sheets around him faintly perfumed with lotus oil. His eyes still chase the ceiling, where Aten's rays are painted, arms stretching upward, as he so often did in his ceremonies. But his breath is lighter, more uneven, as though even Aten's rays can no longer fill his lungs the way they once filled his ego. Around him, courtiers whisper in tones too respectful to disguise their unease. The light feels thinner here, not golden but gray. Asterisk, Nefertiti moves nearby like a shadow, still graceful, still carved from discipline and poise, though her face shows lines of worry never painted onto propaganda walls. She leans close to one of their daughters, the child wide-eyed and uncertain. You feel the weight of inevitability. The great reformer of gods, the king who banished bedtime deities, cannot banish his own nightfall. Asterisk, and what happens to a city so tightly bound to one man's vision when the man is gone? Around you there is a strange expectancy in the air, as if every household is holding in a collective breath. Bakers, potters, builders, even priests, who whispered in shadows, all waiting for the signal. Will Aten remain supreme, or will the world tip back into its wider rhythm of gods? Asterisk, historians still argue over the details of his death. Some say illness carried him, perhaps weakened after years in the relentless desert sun. Others wonder if courtly intrigue had a hand in it, though there is little clear evidence. What we know is this: not long after Akhenaten's death, his work unraveled almost with the speed of twilight. The unfinished tombs remained bare. The capital he built was abandoned. The names he gave his daughters were rewritten, substituting Aten for Amen, or other gods long silenced. Asterisk, there is an odd tenderness in this unraveling. You walk quietly through Akhenaten's wide streets one final time. They seem too empty, expansive and hollow, as if the city was always more sermon than settlement. Homes are deserted, dust gathering in corners, reed mats left behind. A toy carved from clay, once clutched in a child's hand, lies forgotten near a doorway. Life shifts on, quietly, without waiting for official decrees to catch up. Asterisk, even in abandonment, beauty lingers. Painted reliefs of the royal family caressed by Aten's rays fade, but still shimmer faintly in places. Harp strings lie snapped in deserted courtyards. You step onto the palace balcony and feel the unrelenting desert wind sweeping through, carrying sand into every crevice, erasing outlines with patient determination. Kings may command sunlight, but sand will always own the last word. Asterisk, the gods return gradually, like guests trickling back after a concert ends. Temples long silent fill, again with voices. Thoth is called to guide scribes, Hathor to soothe mothers and children, Isis to mend grief, Osiris to keep eternal vigil. over the dead. Even rowdy OL bass is carved back into charms, sticking out his tongue right into history's camera lens, as if mocking the whole Aten experiment. Asterisk. And so you stand in these abandoned halls, listening to an empire resume its age-old rhythm. For the brief span of years, Akhenaten tried to reorder the stars themselves. But even the most radical of pharaohs cannot put the night in storage forever. You picture the gods of sleep swooping back into children's dreams, like actors returning from backstage, pretending they'd merely taken a short breather. Asterisk, the irony is sharp but gentle. Akhenaten dreamed of light, eternal. Yet his reign is remembered as a fleeting shadow between dusk and dawn. Aten still shines in the Egyptian pantheon, a disk among many. But bedtime is once more crowded with the old familiar guardians. Asterisk, the desert breeze quiets. You take one last look at Aten, the so-called city of the sun, now settled into slumber beneath the stars it once ignored. The silence feels final, though not sorrowful, just the closing of a strange, bright-eyed chapter in humanity's long bedtime story. Asterisk, asterisk, the night deepens, and for the first time, no decree pushes against it. You step slowly into the sands beyond Aten, turning one last time to view the hollow city, its painted rays dulled, its empty courtyards listening only to the rustle of reed grass in the wind. It feels like walking away from a dream, one so vivid, so peculiar, you wonder how real it ever was. Perhaps this has always been the destiny of radical visions. They blaze like comets across the sky, then fade into memory, leaving the stars to shine undisturbed. Asterisk, in the silence, you reflect that Egypt has outlasted its pharaoh's experiment, not through grand battles or political revolutions, but through bedtime itself. The whisper of mothers humming lullabies, fathers polishing amulets by lamplight, priests murmuring prayers to Nut, to Base, to Hathor. All of these quiet rituals formed the soft resistance that ultimately triumphed. While kings constructed cities of light, ordinary families lit simple lamps and dreamed under watchful stars. Night was never erased. Humanity's need for rest was too deeply stitched into the fabric of existence. Asterisk, you lie back onto the cool sand, a makeshift mattress beneath the white Egyptian sky. The air tastes of stone, dust, and Nile dampness drifting softly from afar. Above, the stars twinkle with stubborn nonchalance, as though amused by Akhenaten's brief attempt to exclude them. Orion adjusts his belt across the horizon. Sirius flickers sharply, a bright herald. The Milky Way stretches overhead, a sprawling night river mirroring the Nile that lingers just out of reach. Asterisk. And it comforts you how much larger and gentler time is than kings. Pharaohs may announce, sun may glare, temples may rise and fall, but the night remains. You feel it folding around you now, like a linen sheet, pulled carefully by unseen hands. The old bedtime gods crowd near, Bess exaggerating a silly face just for your amusement, Hathor bending with her sweetness to press you into calm, Thoth with his ibis head scratching notes across the heavens as if designing dreams for you to test. Guardians, protectors, companions, they never really left. They simply waited. Asterisk, historians still debate many things. Was Akhenaten a visionary monotheist ahead of his time? Was he a tyrant, squeezing power from tradition? Or was he just one restless dreamer who loved the sun too much? The texts give no full answer. Yet, as you drift on the sand, your body gradually heavier, your breath loosening, those questions feel less urgent. To sleep, to dream, those are answers older than scholarship itself. Asterisk, you yawn, and the desert responds with its own long sigh, a breeze drawing across your face, cool and soft, as if inviting you to close your eyes. Aten disappears behind you, already half swallowed by drifting dunes. The pharaoh who fought the night is forgotten into its endlessness, and you, small but eternal, lie beside echoes of kings and gods alike, waiting gently at the threshold of dreams. Sleep comes like a tide, slow but steady, carrying you down from the weight of voices and histories until only the hum of the Nile and the comfort of the stars remain. And in that moment, you understand something profound and simple. Even the most powerful among us cannot control bedtime. The old gods were right, night will always keep its place, because people will forever need its quiet company. The story loosens here, gently unraveling into rest. You are lying now in the cool desert sand, but in truth, you could be anywhere. Beside the hum of a fan in your room, beneath the soft creak of wood, hidden beneath sheets, or drifting on a small boat across your own quiet river of dreams. The desert wind lowers itself, almost like a breath you can follow, long, slow, reassuring. In and out. A steady rhythm, deeper each time. Your eyes are heavy now, not from history, but from safety. The stars above you blur into gentle light, fading from sharp pinpricks into a diffuse warmth that settles around your body. The Nile's flow becomes the whisper of your own pulse, timeless, cradling. You are part of Egypt's story, part of a much grander lullaby sung across millennia. In this stillness, you release kings and gods alike. You no longer need decrees, or temples, or suns. There is only the certainty that rest belongs to you, as much as it once belonged to every child tucked under linen, to every dreamer staring into night skies, to every mother humming quietly in the dark. Each breath is slower. Each thought floats out to join the river. Nothing rushes here. Nothing demands. The sand sinks beneath you like a mattress. The night draws its cool hand over your brow, and the world sighs along with you. The journey is complete now. History drifts into silence, and silence carries into sleep. All is calm, all is safe, and the night is yours.